Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today the Cleveland Browns finally got to say goodbye to Deshaun Watson, at least for the rest of this season. If you don't know what I'm talking about, early on in the Browns-Bengals game on Sunday, Deshaun Watson suffered a lower right leg injury. It was a no-contact injury, and when you saw the replay, you knew immediately that it was a ruptured Achilles and that he was going to miss the rest of the season and probably miss some time potentially next season. And after he was injured, he was getting carted off the field. And it was reported by some Browns reported that there was a good number of Cleveland Browns fans that were cheering that Deshaun Watson was getting carted off the field. And a lot of people would maybe kind of understand why Cleveland Browns fans don't necessarily like Deshaun Watson because obviously there's like his off the field stuff where he had the 26 sexual assault cases with the masseuses, and that's why he got suspended in the NFL for a few years, and then he also had another sexual assault case like earlier this season that got resolved. But Deshaun Watson, not necessarily the most likable guy off the field. And then, two, specifically for Cleveland Browns fans, we've covered this on the show. He has not just been playing like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL this season. He is playing like statistically like the worst quarterback in the NFL in the history of the league. His numbers are down there with like Jamarcus Russell, Ryan Leaf, every single bust that you've ever heard of. He is right down there with them. And then he also, even if you compare him to like all of the other Cleveland Browns quarterbacks, he's all the way at the bottom of those lists too. And the Cleveland Browns probably have one of the worst centuries out of anyone in the NFL on poor quarterback play. So it's really saying something of how bad Deshaun Watson has been playing. But there were some Cleveland Browns players that were upset with the fans' reaction to Deshaun Watson booing, notably Myles Garrett and Jameis Winston. And they kind of called out fans for cheering on Deshaun Watson's injury. And I'll just go ahead and I'll play you these two clips here from Myles Garrett and then Jameis Winston. And then we'll come back on the other side and talk about it afterward.
No one deserves that. I've seen him work his ass off to, get back here and put a smile on his face and, try to put everything that's outside the facility behind him. Death threats, people come to his house, people, going after his family. No, like I said, no one deserves that. And I hate using the word deserves. I'm usually, pretty consistent saying earned. He hadn't earned it and he doesn't deserve it. Man does pretty much everything right. He's been a model citizen through college and most of the pros. He plays the game as hard as anyone I've seen. Puts everything on the line, willing to throw his body out there, and he plays the game at 100 miles per hour, and there's a risk of being injured, and that he took that risk. But we have to be there for him as a team, as an organization. We can't look down on the guy because of any mistakes on the field or anything off the field. We don't have anything. We don't have any more high ground to look down on the guy.
Okay, so there's a lot I obviously have to say about that, but before I get into that, let's listen to what Jameis Winston had to say here real fast here. This is a little bit longer of a response than what Myles Garrett had here. So here's what Jameis Winston had to say after the game about the injury.
The way I was raised, I was taught to love no matter the circumstances, especially for people who do right by you. I'm grateful that I had a chance to serve the son, but I am very upset with the reaction to a man that has had the world against him for the past 4 years, and he put his body and life on the line for this city every single day, regardless of your perception, regardless of what you thought should happen with him. He committed every single day that I've been here to be the best that he can be for this team. And I know I come from the deep South, Birmingham, Alabama, Bessemer, Alabama. So I know the standard that hungry fans want. But the way I was raised, I will never pull on a man when he's down. but I will be the person to lift him up. And that all of us have unique experiences. All of us have circumstances, conditions, and facts that we face every single day. And I pride myself in being a man of increase and being a man that wants the best out of everybody. I tell myself every morning what I want for myself, I want for everyone. And I do not want the treatment that Deshaun Watson has received from these passionate fans. I know you love this game. When I first got here, I knew these were some amazing fans. But Deshaun was treated badly. And now he has to overcome another obstacle. So I'm going to support him. I'm going to lift him up. And I'm going to be there for him. Because I see the way he fights. I see the way that he works. And I know who he is as a person and as an NFL quarterback. And that's all I have to say to address him. I'm sending up my prayers. I already prayed for his leg, and I will continue.
Okay, so obviously the Myles Garrett thing. The first off, the thing I have to say about that, we're going to touch on them, Winston and Myles Garrett's answers in a little bit. But right off the bat, poor choice of words by Myles Garrett to say that Deshaun Watson has been a model citizen for most of his career in the college and the pros. Just very, very poor choice of words. I'm a little sympathetic to that because as someone that talks in front of a microphone just a little bit, it is pretty easy to like say and misspeak, on something. Maybe if you said, excellent teammate throughout college and the pros. Like I think I even said earlier, I think instead of in this exact recording, I think I actually said boo instead of cheer. So yeah, it's just a thing that happens every once in a while when you talk in front of microphones. Sometimes you can really misspeak a lot. So definitely poor choice of words there by Myles Garrett. But first, before we get into that stuff, I want to talk about like the fans' reaction and react to that because obviously, even though Deshaun Watson, not a good football player anymore, not that good of a person off the field, I still think if you are a fan at a sporting event, you do not cheer for when someone gets hurt. You do not cheer for someone to get hurt. I think that is something that is like pretty plain and obvious, pretty simple. And I'm not going to sit here and, virtue signal and say, how dare the Cleveland Browns fans, how dare you cheer on Deshaun Watson's leg injury. That's not what I'm going to do here today. And even too, there's like some like segments of like fans I saw online yesterday that were saying the things about the Cleveland Browns fans, like how despicable of the Cleveland Browns. This is who they are. They are this terrible fan base that's cheering on the injury of their quarterback that they don't like for many different reasons. And it's like, okay, are you telling me that if we lived in an alternate universe and Deshaun Watson was on the Falcons, if he was on the Panthers, if he was on the Dolphins, if he was on whatever other team you want to imagine Deshaun Watson on, and this exact scenario happened where he was playing like the worst quarterback of all time. He had all of these sexual assault things that he's had in the past that this wouldn't happen in other fan bases. Like if you think that is really the case, like I have a bridge to sell you. I've interviewed it's mostly been college, people that cover college teams, but we've done over like 50, 60 interviews with people covering different like teams all around the country. And one thing that I've learned from doing this a little bit is, are there differences in some fan bases? Of course, absolutely. But I like to think that most of the fan bases around just sports in general are more similar than they are different. So obviously I don't blame I'm not like, saying it's a good thing that Cleveland Browns fans like cheered on Deshaun Watson's injury. But they're not unique in that sort of like scenario here. With that being said too, there's different types of injuries. There is like, like when Nick Chubb got injured for the Cleveland Browns last year, I was sad. I was sad for Nick Chubb. I wasn't sad about Deshaun Watson, getting injured. I wasn't happy, but I was more like kind of shocked, as I think most of us are when we see like, a very serious season ending injury for any player. Similarly, like when OJ Simpson died, didn't feel that sad. But when Bill Walton died, I did feel pretty sad. So like there's different types of emotions that we have for different players. But I think as long as we kind of have an agreement, to try and treat everyone with some level of respect, I think that's something we can all strive for as fans. Now, getting back to Garrett and Jameis Winston and their responses here. Um, I don't blame them for what they said. Obviously, Miss Garrett, probably should have used some different words, talking about him being a model citizen and things like that. But I don't blame them for coming out and being good teammates and supporting Deshaun Watson, because you do, as an NFL player, you don't choose who your teammates are. Like Myles Garrett got drafted to the Cleveland Browns. The way that the NFL works, it's hard for you to get, to move different teams, just in general. So it's like you don't really choose who your teammates are for the most part. So you kind of are stuck with them, and you kind of have to, support them through their ups and downs, all of their faults on and off the field. And these guys are just being good teammates and trying to show their support for Deshaun Watson. And I also think with them too, these are two guys, and I think you can kind of tell this a little bit with some of their answers here, especially Jameis Winston, where he's kind of put himself, I think both these guys, too, put themselves in the shoes of Deshaun Watson and kind of said, like, well, geez, what would happen if I had a serious injury like that? You just know how devastating that is for a player, it's a lot of times when players, it doesn't matter who the player is. There's usually a lot of players, if they get a season ending injury, whether that's something with their back, spine, neck, leg, usually a lot of players, kind of sit down and they take a knee, and it's kind of a big realization moment of oh my God, that could have been me. And specifically with Garrett and Winston, both these guys have had incidences on the field, off the field in the past, where it has been pretty much publicly, uh, things where people have been able to kind of go on national TV and then talk about Garrett and Winston separately. And I think both of them probably absorbed a lot of that coverage. Garrett, obviously, when he took Mason Rudolph's helmet off, hit him over the head with it. And then you had Jameis Winston too. He had all kinds of weird things that was going on with him at college. He also had a situation in Tampa where I believe he roped an Uber driver or something like that. And he got suspended for 3 games or something like that when he was in Tampa. And, both of them probably saw a lot of the media coverage when they had their certain instances, and, probably had them characterized in certain ways that they didn't necessarily agree with fully. And I think part of them sympathizes with Deshaun Watson and his situation. And they say, well, geez, I've had my faults in my life. What would happen if I tore my Achilles and then fans were cheering, for me to be injured? That would be something that would be very, very, disturbing. And I think they are also thinking too, well, if that happened to me, I would want my teammates to come out and support me. So I don't blame them for saying what they said there whatsoever. With all of that being said, they maybe were a little bit too over the top with what they said. There's no way you guys are going to control this narrative or try and create this narrative to make Deshaun Watson some sort of sympathetic figure that everyone is going to watch this injury and shed a tear for. Like we said, we didn't cry when O.J. Simpson died. We cried when Bill Walton died. We cried when Nick Chubb got hurt. We didn't cry when Deshaun Watson got hurt. And I'm completely okay with that reality. Deshaun Watson is a bad person off the field, and he is a very, very bad NFL quarterback. And I'm completely fine with Cleveland Browns fans not liking him, not having any sympathy for him and his injury. This guy got paid $200 million after he sexually assaulted 26 women. He is going to have more money than anybody probably watching this video will ever touch combined. So I don't feel bad for Deshaun Watson at all. Obviously, wish him a well recovery. Hope that he can live a fulfilling life. If he commits any more crimes, I think he should get pursued to the fullest extent of the law. But right now, it looks like this dude's NFL career, if we're getting to a bigger picture thing of just the injury, his NFL career is probably over, right? There's no way, with how bad he was playing this season, how bad he's been playing his entire tenure with the Cleveland Browns, that after an Achilles injury, that he is going to come back and be any sort of a better football player than he already is, which he's not that good of a football player right now. I think it's safe to say that this dude is probably just going to be living in Cleveland, probably wearing street clothes for the rest of his career. Because I do think that his contract, does it go through 27? I think it goes through 2027. So Cleveland Browns here still have this situation with Deshaun Watson where you might have not have him play football for you guys anymore, but the weight of that contract is still going to be an absolute anchor for you guys trying to compete at the highest level for Super Bowls over the next 2-3 years. And the bright side is, though, you might not have to watch him play football anymore, because I know Cleveland Browns fans absolutely hated that. And maybe you guys can have a decent draft pick this year and you can draft, your favorite pick of the litter of the young college quarterbacks that are coming into the league. So there you have it, guys. That's going to do it for this episode here today. If you liked what you saw here today, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you haven't done so already, subscribing to this channel is the number one thing that you can do to support my work here. It costs you absolutely $0, and it is the best way to help small channels like this grow. And if you like this video, please check out other videos on the Sports Detective Podcast channel page. We talk NFL, we talk college football. We're getting ready for basketball season in the next few months here, so we're going to be talking a lot more about stories as it pertains to that in college and the pros. And thank you very much for watching. We'll talk to you next time.